Hello, my friends out there in the universe of power. My name is Gabriel Pena, and welcome to Titan Talk. Tonight, I am recording on the eve of August 7th, 1 week after I was last talking to you. Yesterday was the Giants Live World Deadlift Championships and World Open in Cardiff, Wales. And I've got a special guest here tonight, one of my Los Titans athletes, the American Deadlift record holder, CJ Krause. CJ, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to finally be on the show, and especially talking about what happened yesterday, so the Deadlift World Championships.
Yeah, you get two deadlifters together talking about the World Deadlift Championships. I'm sure there's going to be some good little nuggets of gold thrown in here and there. But before we get into that, you're deep in the prep of some big things coming up on the horizon. What's next for CJ Krause?
We're about 2 weeks out from the first ever 80 kilogram pro show, Clash of the U80s out here in Denver, actually. So it's convenient that's where I live. Lucky enough to be one of the athletes that doesn't have to travel to it. But yeah, I'm so excited to be representing and being able to be part of the first ever 80 kilogram professional show. Yeah,
I mean, you've got the home turf advantage, and you've just been looking on fire. The last time I saw you in person was at the official Strongman Games Southwest Regional, and I mean, you just really brought out that on that day. You're looking good, my friend, and you've been sending me updates with your training, how hitting good deadlift numbers, good overheads. I mean, I feel like you're in a pretty confident and comfortable spot right now.
I'm pretty comfortable for everything's going the right way. I can't complain by anything for what my capabilities are. I don't feel like I'm in any kind of bad spot. I mean, obviously I have great coaching coming my way that helps out a bunch on that one and get mentally ready. So I think I'm bringing one of my best packages I've ever been able to bring to a competition in a few weeks. So I'm very excited for that.
Excellent. Going forward. Getting to take the chains off and let the beast roam free.
I'm ready.
So talking about, your accolades with the American Deadlift record, what's the actual numeric record on that? Give the audience a clue.
The numerical record is 715 pounds.
715 in which division?
That is the 80 kilogram division, so the 176.4, I guess, is the exact.
So the next question is, as your coach, yeah, sure, but also as a fellow deadlifter, when does the world record fall for CJ Krause?
January.
All right.
I plan on.
You heard it here, folks.
January it's going to fall. I plan on being out in the UK actually doing Luke Davies and Brian Lovelace's show. They're all holding a record breaker. I'm going to be out there then. So that's the plan, is to make that record fall officially. I mean, I plan on hitting it sooner. We're going to talk about some ideas I have, but that's when I can officially call it. That's my next opportunity.
You're looking very capable, my friend, and I'm sure that this record will fall, and there will be many more that you will chase down afterwards. But we'll cross those bridges when we get there. For now, you've got the Clash of the 80s right on the horizon. So all the best with the coming weeks. But again, thanks for having your insight on the show tonight. Yesterday was a pretty big day for strength. The World Deadlift Championships. This is a day each year where we are gritting our teeth, wondering if Hafthor Bjornsson or Eddie Hall's legendary deadlifts will finally fall. And sad to say it, but unfortunately, yesterday was not the day for the world record to fall. Going into the contest, did you have any favorites going in there who you thought, all right, this guy stands a really good chance?
I mean, when you dropped out, not really, but
that's a kiss-up answer.
It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to predict, honestly. It depends on the day. If someone that's gone for a world record attempt, you can be as close as you can. You can't attempt it early. It just has to be there. I'm not sure. I think we're about probably another year out before we start seeing it fall. We saw a very close one and a very well prepped lift, but it was just, there's a lot of fluke things that happened on the way there. Obviously, Ernji's a couple more injuries to a lot of great deadlifters that were in the ballpark of this right near the end of the finish line. So that was heartbreaking, I'm sure, for you, of course, and then a couple other athletes. So I think we're about a year out from seeing that fall.
I think so too. And, even talking about myself before I had to withdraw, I knew going into this year, prior to the injuries that I had a couple of weeks ago, I knew that I stood a really good chance at pulling my best deadlift, but was it going to be the 505? I don't think so. I was more focused on, okay, last year I got 1,000 pounds. This year I want to get that 1050. And I was feeling very confident that I was going to knock that down, but You know, if you were following along the podcast, I sprained my hip pretty bad 2 weeks ago, and a very inopportune time to sprain a hip or to feel a pop come from any muscle. I was training leg press in preparation for the Shaw Classic, the car leg press that we'll have, and I felt a really rowdy pop come from my inner thigh, and I've been playing catch up trying to make sure that injury doesn't take me out of all the contests that I had in these recent days. But I sadly had to pass up on the Giants Live World Open and World Deadlift Championships, and after watching what happened this week or yesterday, I think I made the right call, and I feel really good about that call. And we can delve into that more, but before we talk about me, I want to talk about the deadlift championships. And like I asked you, they're going into this thing. I definitely had some favorites. You know, first of all, Mitch Hooper is just a phenom. I mean, he has really hit the strongman world by storm. What is your impression of this guy? When did he pop onto your radar?
Pretty much like when everyone else did with World's Strongest Man. I kind of knew a little bit about him because I have some Canadian friends, but like I didn't think he was going to be like this much of a force so early. And he's got such raw talent. That's the biggest thing I see with him, because like some of like the more like form dependent like things like even like the stones are kind of like not his forte yet, but he's all the force and all the driven to do that. So he's just raw power. And the sky's the limit for him, honestly.
And he's not the biggest guy out there, not by a long shot. I mean, but he's so
an athlete, though. That's
exactly it. He's so athletic. His background in American football, in marathon running, and powerlifting. I mean, the guy takes all of the strong suits from those different schools of training, and you can tell that he puts it into his athleticism and his performance. He's I saw it at World's Strongest Man, where he just hit the scene like a horse hot out the gates, and he carried that with him into the World Dev Championship. So that he was an athlete who, leading into this thing, was talking a big game. I mean, he was very confident that he would hit the 505. I think I remember him going on to a podcast with Giants Live with Colin Bryce and Darren Sadler, and they asked him, "What will you do when you hit the 505, or do you think you will hit the 505?" He's like, "Well, when I hit the 505, will you let me try 510?" I'm like, "Okay, dude, let's not count those chickens before they hatch." But I think he even said after the show yesterday that he didn't realize how far away he was from 505. And when you get to the 1,100-pound range, this is the same talking for you. When you get to that 700-pound range, you're at such a high percentage of not just your max, but the world record, the heaviest weight that's ever been lifted, that every small increment, you literally get a feeling for that saying, the feather that broke the camel's back. You know, it really all adds up. I thought he was going to get the 1050, but it looks like he played a smart card in passing out on that one and getting the 1000, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Especially he probably felt something that didn't feel right. It's like a lot of times with deadlifts and things like that. Like, especially there's a show after this. It wasn't just like a one lift and they were done for most of these athletes. They had the whole other side of it as well going into this one. But yeah, like you said, I mean, when you get close to that like human peak of like for that body size or that overall with this one especially, every couple kilos, every percentage point, half a percentage point more that you add to your max is that much more training you have to do. Like you'll train for 3-4 months focusing on a lift to add 5 pounds sometimes to your max and things like that. When you're in that high level, it's not like we're going from 315 pounds to 365 pounds. It's a massive job. You can't add 50 pounds in a couple months.
Absolutely. And at the same time, just as much as you're chasing that next PR, the next 5, 10, 15 pound increment of weight, you're also fighting just as hard your ability to survive and not get crippled by it in the process. So it's not like all steam ahead. It's also like, let's allocate some of those efforts towards really smart defense at the same time.
Well, it's how much almost like prep time and almost warm-up time you have to increase yourself with. Like a lot of times I'm doing deadlift training and my warm-up is almost an hour just to get to like working sets at the percentage I'm at right now at the weights. I can't just throw like 500-600 on the bar and from scratch and go right into it, no matter how easier that feels once I'm warmed up. It's the same thing, especially like these higher numbers, these 800s that people are repping out like yourself. And they take more prep time and more like warm up and all that. So
they do. As of late, and I'm talking mostly like this last year, when I have a deadlift day, like a really big deadlift day, that is all I'm doing. Like there is no time or energy budget to get in there, get the warm up that I need to, get the setup and put down that it requires, and have any energy left for accessory work. It's like if I'm the only guy and I don't have someone helping me out, that's my whole workout is just the deadlift. And maybe I'll come back later in the day for some accessories, but you don't get it all. It's just such a big endeavor when you're chasing these astronomical pulls. But Hooper looked really good. I was anticipating him. I know that the big dogs that I was watching for who could possibly get the 505, Ivan Makarov, of course. I mean, how many times has this guy lifted 505 off the ground but just not been able to lock it out?
He was like, if anyone was going to do it, it had to be him. Like, he was like invited just for that purpose. And his 1000 was as smooth as I could see. Like, it was just straight bar pass. Like, that's all you can ask for from that lift. Like no real delay, except for like slightly under the hips, but like we're talking minimalistic there.
No, it was beautiful. And the thing is, we watched last year that he got the 1000, he went for the 1050 to play it smart, and then he tried the 505 last year and he couldn't do it. So the real scrutiny last year was like, Ivan, you should have passed up on the 1050 and gone straight for the 505. And Eddie last year, Eddie Hall, stood by that if Ivan did not do the 1050, he would have gotten the world record. So this year he took that strategy to heart. He passed up on the 1050, went for the 505, and it just was not there. But
it was close though. That was close. The thing. Like it was so explosive off the ground. I thought we were going to see a fight. The way it moved, like to like just below his knee, where you could start getting maybe a hitch on top of it. It was just way more explosive than I expected it to be, especially with that. Maybe he even expected it moved faster than he thought it could be, because that can mess with deadlifters sometimes. Where if it moves too quick, it can like jar you a little bit. I've had that happen before in some training sessions.
Same, and it can kind of catch the lower back a little bit, or so whatever is the weakest link in terms of what's not the most locked in, that kind of catch will go there. But he was the guy that I was, in my mind, I'm like, if anyone stands the best chance, it's going to be him. He has pushed himself to be so conditioned in the 1,000+ pound range, just not quite enough to get the 505 from the ground. But another one who I was hoping could make it, but this guy is just almost impossible because of his nationality, is Payman Maharipur. I wanted him. I still yearn for the day that I get to go head to head with him in contests. But Payman, the Iranian, he is just an incredible deadlifter. The numbers that he's been putting up, but we just can't get him into contest. And I think he might just be on the bad end of a stick with governments and politics preventing him from getting to the contest, but he's someone that I think stands a really good chance if we can get him to the competition. And aside from those two, my third pick for who I think could really take the 505 for a run would be Adam Bishop. But
that's one of the names I was gonna bring up. Is what do you think Adam Bishop would have done if it was possible? That's because again, it's one of those like heartbreaking things. It's like training so hard. This is what he put his year into. Yeah. Like he focused on that one thing. Like he put strongman as like a B level, even though a B level is still like elite level of training. But his focus was that 5-5. And I think you have to do that if you're going for that record, honestly. That has to be your biggest focus, and then everything else kind of falls a little bit.
It's the deadlift world record. It's the most monumental of the lifting records, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people will agree with that. But I've even quoted myself with talking to Giants Live in interviews. If someone's going to pull the 505, it's going to be me or Bish. And that's, I know I can do it someday, whether or not it's, a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, I know I can do it. But I also know that the times that I've gone head to head with Adam Bishop in contests, especially on a deadlift, those are some of the most fun neck and neck trials of strength. And I was really sad to see he had to withdraw the months or the weeks prior to the contest, before I had to withdraw too. But he's someone who I think will still stand a very good chance of, when he is healthy, I think he stands a good chance of pulling the 505. But
I completely agree.
As far as anyone else, I mean, we saw Pavlo Nakonechny last year. He talked a big game. And this year, his prep leading into the contest was relatively in the dark. And I think he was also trying to stay out of scrutiny from his shitty behavior last year. But Pavlo really brought it this year too. I mean, he might not have had the 505 caliber strength, but his 1,000 looked really good.
His 1,000 looked solid. I mean, it's hard to like nitpick like 1,000-pound pulls and things like that, because these are such astronomical numbers. But there's definitely some like little imperfections he can definitely work on. He's definitely one of those raw strength guys that might have gotten away with it for a long time and is now learning the little intricacies of a deadlift, like the way to lock properly and the way to make sure everything's braced before you start pulling. And it seems like he's definitely evolved as an athlete since last year.
Well, he's still very young. He is a young athlete
too.
No,
he's an incredible athlete, but that's what I mean. Like when you're that young and you're able to get by with that, and he's a freak of nature. Obviously, he's such a large statured man and able to pull that much at his age. It's again, I think he could be one someday, but I think he's still a few years away and some technique away. But the right coaching and the right work, I mean, I could see it happening with him.
You know what I noticed yesterday, and I noticed it before, but I took extra notice of it. When he deadlifts at these contests in a suit, he wears also neoprene shorts under the suit, like to give him a little bit of extra thickness there. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but when I'm wearing a suit, I don't want anything else. Like it's already so constricting. I can't imagine having neoprene shorts on under that. What about you?
I wore the neoprene shorts when I was at Clash on the Coast.
Under your suit?
Under my suit. I've actually started transferring away to more minimalistic things with it. I've noticed that like it's just a little bit too bulky on the quads now that I'm like getting deeper into like the heavier training, and I felt like it was more so to keep me warm and feel like I want a little more pop. But the more confident I get with, again, more confidence, more technique things, I'm noticing it's not necessary and it's become more of a hindrance. So I've kind of taken it away for my suit and my unsuited recently with all that. I think that's the right way to go eventually, but I could see where he wants that little bit extra oomph if he doesn't have like everything locked in. That's where my head was at when I did it for Clash, but I've moved past that personally.
I thought it was interesting because the dude's already got such massive tree trunks for legs, and to see like that extra thickness there from the neoprene shorts, I'm like, all right, guy, when is there more machine than man, you know? But he for the whole rest of the competition too, he was really a force, and he played it smart, not trying anything heavier on the deadlift, but with all the other guys, you know, we opening up with 400 kilos, 880 pounds. That is an insane weight to have as an opener. And I know Shane Flowers getting the call up within days of the competition after both myself and Asko Keru had to withdraw. I mean, he is just coming off of a hiatus from training, just getting back into training, and he gets the call like, hey, you want to come contest your deadlift at the Giants Live World Open? And he was just concerned with getting that 880, and he got it. He nailed it. And then there's Andy Black, too, who's still last year in Manchester at last year's World Deadlift Championships. That was his first debut. He got the call up last minute, and he showed up, and he put on a show. He's still slightly short of the 1,000-pound mark, but I think Andy Black is growing and gaining finesse with every contest that he does.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those ones that is getting better each and every, especially at these like more static lifts. That just, again, he's so new to the sport, too. Like, he's new to lifting weights for the most part from what I know about Andy Black. So he's just like, again, that raw, strong guy that's learning everything as he goes. And he's such a nice guy. I actually met him when I was out at the Arnold UK. One of the nicest people, just humble as can be. So yeah, I mean, I love seeing these athletes coming up through and stepping up, and that's hard to do. And these aren't like 400 kilos is not something you can just like walk into. They have to be confident they can hit it. Some of them weren't even sure, but it's sometimes game day is game day.
There was a time not too long ago, I think even Bill Kazmaier was recollecting it, where 880 was the world record, you know, and to have that as the opener, that's pretty hefty. But interesting getting to watch the athletes as they go through the opening attempts, who passes on what, who jumps in where. Another athlete that I saw yesterday who has really increased across the board was Gavin Bilton, Big Gav. I mean, every competition he's doing, he's just getting better and better. And I got to compete with him multiple times last year, including in Glasgow at the World Tour final. And he had a little bit of a cardiac episode that he needed to be hospitalized. And to see him bounce back from that, to come back in full health for World's Strongest Man this year, and then to come back and represent in his home turf in Wales, do such a good job. Watching Big Gav yesterday was one of the coolest parts, one of the most exciting parts of the show, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up later. He was like the most improved by far across the board of anybody I've seen over the past year. He's just like incrementally improved in everything. I was going to bring up more when we got into like the details of each event. But yeah, he was so much fun to watch. He's like, it's weird to say he's leaned out a good amount as well.
I agree. It is weird to say because he's such a big man, but he has trimmed down a lot, and it really shows in his.
His back is like so defined now compared to what he was. If you look at pictures from like even a year ago, he still has that big gut that he's known for, and that's kind of like his thing, and that's the way his body's built. But when I saw his back, and I was like, oh, okay, Gav, I see you.
Yeah.
And I was like, you definitely like either put on a little more muscle or leaned out or some combination of both. That's like, and it's significant, especially those moving events he was doing. Again, he's the most improved by far as of anyone I've seen in the past like year in the sport.
Yeah, and we can go into it more, but watching him in motion, that was a really stark contrast in terms of past performances. He's bringing it, and I was really hoping he could get that 1,000-pound pull because I know he wanted it. He wanted it so bad, and his training has been looking good. His deadlift, for such a tall man, such a long way up, his deadlift has been coming in strides. So he may not have gotten 1,000 pounds.
And so his body size, his arms aren't super long either, comparatively. Like, he's a large guy, but his arm length actually is a hindrance as well if you watch the way he has to, like, get in position for the deadlift. And that's something people don't realize. Like, you can be short and have long arms, or you can be tall with short arms, and it just changes all your leverage points. So it doesn't matter about, like, really height. It matters, like, arm length, the torso, how that all works together in a deadlift.
Yeah. And he was crushed that he didn't get that 1,000 pounds, and he'll get it soon. If not yesterday, he's definitely got on the horizon. Also going through the roster, I was pretty bummed to see Pa O'Dwyer falling short on some of his deadlift. He's someone that from the time that I first met him at World's Strongest Man 2020, you know, we were both competing together in the same groups in the qualifying rounds. He's a good deadlifter. He's someone that when, you know, and I know you can speak the same, when you are aware of other good deadlifters out there, like, you know who they are because you can feel their energy emanate when they lift. But he's a good deadlifter, and I don't feel like we got a true representation of Pa O'Dwyer's top end yesterday.
I feel like he's been battling injuries all year. That's like the biggest thing. He shows up and he just has a smile on his face. He's one of my favorite people to watch in this sport. So, like, he's just one of those guys that just, like, is a showman. He, like, exudes that. So you never know that he's, like, hurt on the outside, but, like, especially as we saw event 2 with all that, I'm sure he has more residual things he wanted to admit, and he's wanted to put on a show for the crowd, which is kind of what we do this for, honestly. We do it for ourselves, but we also do it for the people watching.
Absolutely. And Pa loves to put on a show, and he's hilarious, and he does an amazing Bill Kazmaier impression.
Oh, okay. I gotta hear
it's just you got to hear it. But like you said, when we saw that carry medley, you know, after he fell short on the deadlift, maybe he must have pulled something there because he was going against Andy Black. And when you see Andy and Pa standing next to each other, you're like, okay, here's big giant Andy, and here's Pa, who's shorter, more athletic, more agile. You expect Pa to blow Andy out of the water, but as he gets towards those last front carry implements, you see him slow down. You see him start to pick up a limp, and it's, you know, did something happen in one of the quads? Did something happen in the hip? But he was an injury that you saw happen throughout the show, whether it was something he carried with him or sustained there. It was tough to see him go down, man. It really was.
Yeah, and it was a rough one to watch, honestly. Like, you could see it happening in real time almost is the biggest thing with all of that. Like, when he comes back for the tires and you really see it, like, kick. And you saw with a lot of athletes, there's a couple injuries that, I mean, when you go for that heavy of a deadlift and have a show after, even if it's just hitting the opener of an 880, like, that's a lot, really taxing the body. And like, there's not a lot of rest time to go from that high of, like, most of the percentage maxes. Usually that's your workout for the day. Like, that's your training day, is that hitting that number. And then to have multiple events after and a moving event directly after, that's a tall order to ask for any athlete, as well as, like, if they had anything residual coming into it, or if they, you know, it's just hard. That's all it is.
And these are all things that I had to weigh in my mind when I was trying to make the call. Do I do this competition, or is it a reckless endeavor in terms of my health? Giants live shows are very fast paced. I mean, there is especially if you go into one event, you do well, but then you do poorly on the next one, you are the first to go on the next event that follows based off of your placing. And those turnovers between events can sometimes be as short as 5 minutes. So it's like, there's no time to warm up. You just got to, you know, put your gear on and get out there ready to go. It's very tough, especially with the World Deadlift Championships as the first event.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I think, like, as a spectator, it's hard to really grasp unless you've done competitions like that. Like even myself that's done multiple shows till I got to the level of doing like Clash and doing things for like cameras and on a live stream and things like that. You don't realize that like you don't get the time you normally get in the gym. You don't get that rest time, and you have to like weigh some events that like maybe I need to skip something, or like a jump in a deadlift that you normally take, or maybe I need to tone back on this. So I need to have some more rest time. There's just a lot of variables that I think is just like comes into play. Especially like I said, a giant live show is definitely one of the fastest paced for such heavy weights. On top of that, and unfortunately, we saw a few injuries because of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, that's one of the things with yesterday. It was so many seeing people drop like flies throughout the course of the competition. It was tough. It was tough to see brother. And before we go further down that road, let's keep going down the roster of athletes. You also had Chris Vanderland, the South Africa's strongest man, who was a special guest deadlifter, and he had pulled 1,000 pounds in his gym or at a competition there in South Africa. I was really gunning for him to get 1,000 pounds in competition there at the World Deadlift Championships. Very nice guy. He had his shot at World's Strongest Man last year in Sacramento 2021, but I think he got sick or something happened on his travels from Africa over here to where he pulled out after the first event or before the show started. I can't remember, but a super nice guy, and I wanted him to have his shot. But that 1,000 pounds, it was crazy because he got it above his knee, and it was moving fast. I'm like, all right, Chris has got it. And then maybe like 6 inches before lockout or less, he puts it right down. No, from your own deadlift experience, what happened? You know, what could have happened to where he needed to put it down like that?
So that's around my sticking point as well, actually. So it's kind of one of those weird spots, like in between like the knee and the hip, where that like quad area. A lot of that is just like your upper back can just give out. That's one of the biggest things there. It's like your upper back just falters, and you feel like it's all this pressure going to the low back. You feel your shoulders fall, and when it's that much weight, and it's weight so much more than you feel like you're about to get tossed. Right. Like it's hard to actually try to sit back into it as deep as you can, but that's how you have to counteract it. But in that moment, you only have like half a second to figure that out. It's really challenging. So it's a lot of, I think, just the upper back wasn't there that day, or like the fatigue from even like travel and getting sick might have been like the added thing to on top of it.
You know, and that's, no one knows what is going through the person's mind in terms of what they're feeling, what sensations. And I have to imagine that he felt like something was probably just going to pop, right?
Yep. That's the only reason you would stop in that moment, is something felt wrong. I've done that before. Like my pec decided to like lock up, and I'm like, I need to stop. Like, and it's jarring in that moment. Like that could be something as small as that. And you got to look at it for, pretty much everything in that factor too. Like what's your future? What else do you have going in the next few months? Things like that. And when you're in that moment, it's hard.
It absolutely is. I mean, I said last episode that this sport is like dancing with the devil, especially when your ambitions are, let's see how much the human body can lift from the ground. I mean, there are very real limits there, and we dance with them. But moving down the roster some more, Alexei Novikov, 2020 World's Strongest Man, former champion. I mean, he is someone who, since he came into my radar at the 2017 Arnold, I competed with him for the first time, the Amateur World Championships. He is someone who has consistently gotten better, and we saw it this year at World's Strongest Man, that he has become a jack of all trades. I mean, every weakness that he might have, he has just been building upon. And my favorite part about World's Strongest Man this year was that Flintstone lift. His 546-pound behind the neck split jerk with those stone weights. Novikov is far from the biggest guy, but he put up the biggest weight on that, and it's just a testament to his skill and strength. And what's your take on Novikov?
He is the most skilled athlete out there in terms of technique. He's so methodical. He's someone I actually look up to in the way he approaches the sport. Because the way he looks at it, he looks at the implement first and then strength second. And he's a strong guy, but he didn't come in as the strongest. And now he's becoming one of the strongest. as well. He had to be very technical in everything. I was like, being there for Arnold UK last year and watching him like play with the but like pick up and move with the frame before the event even started, and like the way he did it was just so much very different than other people. And I love that aspect of him. I think he's the most technical competitor we have possibly ever seen because he has to be, and he's become strong over the years. So we're seeing these techniques catch up with the strength, and just it's beautiful to see.
You know, there are some pretty technical athletes out there, and the first guy that comes to mind is Brian Shaw. I mean, he is one of the guys who's always out there with a tape measure, making sure he knows exactly the measurements of everything that he's going to be lifting. So we will see the technical aspect from him. But, yeah, I mean, Novikov for sure. We saw him for that carry medley come out with what looked like some type of shoulder pad to really protect him when he lobs that tire up on his shoulder and sprints down the course with it. But he is someone who is, like I said, a jack of all trades, can really just go full power without having – it seems like he's so precise and accurate that it's like he takes gambles, but he's so good at what he does that in his mind they're not gambles. They are going to be executed with 100% accuracy every single time, and that makes him very dangerous. But the Novikov that we saw yesterday was not the full Novikov that we have all come to know. He is definitely carrying around some residual injuries or ailments or aches from all the contests he's done this year. And, of course, I can imagine the heavy amounts of stress from living in a country that's in wartime with Russia right now. I mean, but it was a Novikov that was not at full power, and that was tough to see because he joined the 1,000-pound deadlift club with me last year in Manchester, and he added to that monumental night where we had 7 of us all hit 1,000 pounds together. And to see him fall short of 1,000 pounds this year was tough. And, I mean, he still performed very well through the competition, even not being at full power, but it was not full-strength Novikov. And that's hard to see and come to grasp with.
Yeah, I mean, we can't know what's going on with him and his everyday life that he has going on over there, especially with us living here in America and everything we have for ourselves. So the fact that he's able to go out there, compete, and get his head on straight and just show out for his country is always nice to see as well with everything they're doing.
On the same note as with Novikov, Evan Singleton, the reigning champion of the Giants Live World Open, he won last year and had every promise to win it again this year. I mean, he was living in the UK for the past month, training. Like, as soon as he got done with the Royal Albert Hall, he was gearing all his efforts to this past competition yesterday. And he was also another guy who last year joined the 1,000-pound deadlift club. And yesterday, he fell short of that 1,000-pound lift also. And that was really tough to see because he got stuck right mid-thigh, right at where the shorts were, and almost he went into a hitch attempt and just did not have what it took to lock it through. What was your take on his deadlift yesterday?
I was very surprised that he didn't get that, in all honesty, because the way he's been training, it's looked impeccable. It's looked great. He is a very I don't want to say reckless deadlifter, but he's very explosive. It's all in one shot, which I kind of like think that way too sometimes. But it can really, if there's anything slightly off when you're going that explosive off the floor, it can end up recoiling back down a little bit and make it even heavier while you get to that sticking point as well. And you see that more with like a mammoth bar than anything else when you're that kind of a like aggressive, like strong puller from the bottom, which he definitely is 100%. He has all the force in the world. But that could have been a part of it that happened. Like it recoiled a little bit down when he wasn't expecting it to, or just there's something that didn't have the full shot, and then he was expecting to be a little bit higher on himself so we could get those hips through at the top. That could, I can't say exactly what happened, but that's kind of like from seeing his previous pulls and seeing how forceful he comes out of the bottom, that would be the only way I don't see him hitting 1,000 pounds.
Evan's deadlift, and this is not talking down on his deadlift in any way, but he's such an explosive guy that when he trains for contests that consistently allow the use of a deadlift suit, I feel like his training gets so painted in that one color where he's only working in the suit. He becomes so, I don't know if dependent is the right word, but trusting on the fact that the suit is going to add to his explosiveness off the ground, to where that pull off the ground, sometimes it looks like it looks more like a pull than a push a lot of times. but it comes up with such ferocity that he always gets it to lock out. But you can see on his deadlift, whether it was this one yesterday or any of his deadlifts in training, that when he does get above the knee to where the hip hinge takes over, his lockouts are a little bit more labored. They are a little bit more labored, and I think he's someone who, I think the simple answer to his deadlift is take some steps back, ditch the suit, and let's really build your raw deadlift for a while. Build that raw deadlift. Maybe do some hex bar. Let's just get away from the assistive devices. But when I knew he couldn't get that 1,000 pounds yesterday, I knew something was up because he did it last year, and I like to think he's only gotten stronger since. But he is also a guy who, and it's not to say that he needs to change or anything, but he is a guy who does not have a cruise gear. It is always just fight or flight response, always 100%. Like, he is hyper stimulated all the time, and it's tough to maintain, especially with preps through multiple contests each month. Royal Albert Hall, this one, the Shaw Classic coming up this week. I mean, it's the World's Strongest Man a couple months ago. It's a tall workload to fill, and I hope he gets some good rest because, you know, we saw Evan had to pull out after the log press. He was not feeling good after the moving event, and we had Neil pick up the MC there, announce to the crowd that Evan was being hospitalized. And I don't know what the extent was of that. I was worried as hell for him, but he put up a post on social media today saying that all is good. He had some tests done as the hospital as a precautionary measure, and he's good to go. And we'll have the Shaw Classic coming up this week, so I'll see him in Colorado. But I was worried for him, man.
I got to hang out with Evan a lot out in Hilton Head, so we actually got become pretty decent friends when it comes to all of that. But yeah, it's hard to watch when you see like a friend like have that happen to, especially. But as an athlete, that's just such one of the hardest things to like decide, and especially these aren't easy shows for any human. Even like someone as like freakishly strong as all of you guys, they're doing this one. So your central nervous system is something that like you need to monitor a lot as an athlete when we're doing these high percentages, because some days like an 80% can feel like 100%.
Oh yeah, and sometimes 65% can feel like 100.
Yeah, and especially like it's hard to gauge, especially when you're going back to back to back to back, and you're always up here, and Evan is always up here in all fashions of his life, and then it's endearing, but it's also like I could see like without ever having that like chill mode, how the body can start freaking out a little bit, and hopefully he gets that in check, and hopefully he's just okay, and it's just a fluke, and it's more bad luck that he just keeps unfortunately having.
I think that's what it is. I think it's bad luck, but I hope that in his downtime from yesterday's contest to the Shaw Classic coming up, that he has just some really good quality rest and recharges, because it's just like talking about Novikov. It's hard to see a brother at less than their full power, especially one who's the reigning champion wanting to defend his title, to get pulled out of the competition after 2 events. That's not what we want to see. You know, that's not what I want to see. Moving down the roster, Rauno Heinle. What can we say about big bad Rauno Heinle yesterday?
I mean, breaking a record. What more can you really say on that one for the Masters record? Was that
breaking the Masters world record for the deadlift, and then
we're in the deadlift championship technically.
Yeah. Watching him pass. Go ahead.
I don't want to take anything away from it, but I think that like a couple guys could have hit the same number for that as well, but they wanted to get the 505 attempt in there. But
Makarov could have done it, but he didn't want to make the same mistake as last year.
That's true. And that was like the biggest thing. That's like my one discrepancy in this, and not to take away from anything from these athletes and like that. Makarov would have been like he would have hit the one in between as well too. But no, like we saw so many records broken on like not the world stage, but each of their country's records, the Masters record, and that record he just turned 40.
Yeah, he just turned 40, and the thing about that lift, he made it look so good. After seeing that lift, I'm like, Rauno is, you look at all the athletes stand at the start of these shows with their flags, he is one of the smaller silhouettes up there, you know, and he made that 1,050 just look buttery smooth, so good that I thought he was for sure going to go for the 505. I'm like, you know what? We might see Heinle take 505 for a ride today. But that's just one of those occurrences where, you know, us as the third-person viewer, we can see something that looks so pinpoint accurate. But him as the lefter no one knows what's going on through his mind. No one knows what sensations he's feeling. That 1,050, there's 1,050 reasons why something should give out on him. And it sounds like he felt something that maybe went a little bit wrong, either in terms of how his body handled the weight or on the way down or the after effects, to where he didn't feel safe doing the 505. And that is a really tough call when you can see how well the 1050 moved, because 505 comes with a $50,000 cash prize along with all the sponsorships that can come from something like that. But
yep.
he is the only one who can make that call, and no one can fault him for that, because he is ensuring you miscalculate an attempt at 1,100 pounds and something goes wrong. That is a weight that can very really kill you in some ways. I mean, it's not a joking matter.
No, by no means. And like, I respect like passing up on that attempt, like 100%. And what, as an athlete, you can always feel like if something doesn't go right, don't do it. That's one thing that I think is important for us to realize as athletes. It's okay to not go for these world records if they're not, because the thing about a world record, every piece of it has to be right 105% of it.
Yep.
Because any small little thing, A, you can get injured. B, it's never been done. That's the thing. Like, we talk about 505 so much that it feels like someone's done it, but no one's done it. And there's been incredible athletes attempt it. So if something doesn't feel right, I mean, I completely respect not doing that. But like I said, that he's someone that, again, in that ballpark of like the way everything moved, he could be the guy hitting 505 sooner than later too.
Yeah, I think so too. And age is just a number with that guy. He's so strong. And we knew he was going to pull something good based off of his training, but you could also see how after that first event, how, you know, he made the call that something was up when he went to the carries on that the farmers compared to his deadlift. He was done. And the farmers just really showed that something got taken from him, you know, physically.
It showed he made the right call.
Yeah.
That's my opinion watching that second event. And it sucks to watch an athlete fail. Like, that's what it looked like. But like, his muscles were literally failing. Yeah. So maybe that was like his PR was hitting that number. That's what his training has gotten him to. That's the number he was aiming for. He wanted to break the over 40, the Masters world record, and get that box checked first, and then move on to the 505. And when we saw the second event, I think that was, again, 100% the right call, not going for the 505, even though every piece of them probably wanted to.
Right. And he looked so good, and I'm so stoked for him, because he had to withdraw from World's Strongest Man this year, so I'm glad he had his redemption. He gets the Masters world record at the deadlift, 1,050 pounds. I would love to pull that. Am I missing anyone on the roster? Do we miss anyone?
I don't think so. I think that finishes it off. I don't see anyone we didn't talk about. It's a stacked roster. It always is, though. Yeah,
it's a stacked roster, and there was a lot of guys who, you know, myself, Bishop, Asko Karu, a lot of guys who are really big deadlifters that just couldn't be there, and
everyone still showed up. That was the cool thing. Like, us as fans watching it, it was sad seeing again you and Bishop and these other deadlifters we wanted to see, but the guys they brought in didn't, you know, hold back at all, and they did great. So power to those athletes for showing up and doing that at some on short notice.
Yeah, I'm so impressed by both Shane and Andy for answering that call. Unless you know, you hear about other athletes, and I think of, you know, some of the other athletes on the Los Titans team, and I definitely won't say names, but some of them will get real, I don't know if panties in a bunch is the right phrase, but if they don't have the full 3 months of contest prep leading into event to have everything perfect, then they are just not feeling good about it. And then it's like, here's the flip side. Well, here's Andy and Shane, 6 days out of the contest, they get the call, hey, you're going to compete at the World Deadlift Championships. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. I mean, that's very admirable, and I can't help but respect it. But moving through the rest of the event, having the World Deadlift Championships as the first event of the contest, watching it carry its weight through these athletes, through the loaded carries, through the log press, through the hammer hold. I mean, it was very hard to see, you know, the athletes who had the aches and pains and struggles with the first event, and watch those get even further intensified through the remaining events of the contest, seeing more guys either pull out or zero events. And, started with a roster of 12 athletes, 13 athletes. And then before we knew it, there was 8.
Yeah, including the macro who's just the deadlift. I believe it was 13 on top of that. I just have a question for you before we go in. Do you think a reorder of the events could have prevented some of this? Like maybe having like the hammer hold as second event. I understand it's not as user friendly to watch, but for athlete wise, do you think that could have prevented some of the ways that we are taxing the legs going from? I think like watching it back and like looking at the events, like I feel like that could have been like one of the major changes that could have helped a lot of athletes do better and be able to perform and like just have rest on that part of the body. Going from a deadlift to a medley it's
tough, man. And I will say as a coach, like anytime that I program sprints or like any running stuff, in my mind I'm like, I really hope these guys and gals are going about their warm-ups the right way so they don't sprain something in the way. Because once you put that body in motion, I mean, you've got very dynamically flexing and contracting hamstrings, hips, glutes. I mean, all the muscles that you just use on that deadlift, and they're already super tight, super drained. I mean, you think of this at a molecular level, like that actin and myosin within the muscle fibers has just been going at high levels of speed and friction and power. I mean, the body is not ready to be running with farmer's handles or throwing a tire over your shoulder and sprinting down the course. I think if you did put the hammer hold right after the deadlift, you would have given the posterior chain and the leg muscles a little bit of time to cool down, and you would have also, 2 birds with 1 stone, you would have taken away the very real after effect of, okay, if we do a hammer hold right after log, all of these guys have torch shoulders. It's a double whammy, which kind of appeals to the nature of strongman. At the same time, if we change these two and swap them, that might have been just a little bit better. And with that loaded carry medley right before stones, just like the hammer was, that could have served as one last little, let's loosen up a bit more before we can go into stones. But
I completely agree with that. That was like my one critique of like how the show ran is like, man, if they would just swap those two, these athletes would have had, just think of it as an athlete. That's the order I would love to do them in, for the reason being, if I have to do a deadlift first, I don't like doing deadlift as first event personally, but I get why they did it, of course. But if I have to do a deadlift first, I'd want something more like upper body for a while. Just let that blood flow get out of my legs for a while, my back.
Well, I will say, to counteract that, I do want the deadlift first. I mean, at least in this format, you're chasing a world record, and I also think about this coming weekend at the Shaw Classic. We've got the Hummer Tire deadlift up first also, and it's a max deadlift event. If I'm going to be going for a max weight, if I'm going to be potentially chasing a world record, I want to be as fresh as possible. Let's put that event first. But when you have an event like that, you have to do due diligence and make sure that you can recover effectively and not jack yourself up after, because those muscles are going to be screaming after what you just did.
They're not happy with you. I promise. Even after a training day, they're not happy with you. And now pushing yourself to your literal max, and then asking more of the body. And then back to back of the same muscle group. And I think we saw that in the second event, why some people we assumed were going to be a little faster, maybe some of the lighter guys that we assumed would be better at this, they have less muscle to, like just by pure size. So it takes them a little bit longer to recover. And that after pulling such a higher percentage of their body weight compared to the bar weight.
I loved seeing Shane move through that medley, because I had just saw him at World's Strongest Man drop the anvil on his foot and break his foot. So to see him come back from that and go, a 275-pound anvil crashing down on his foot, to see him come back from the cast and crutches to running with all these things, it was really cool. But the whole competition, I had to make the call that with all the signs that my body was giving me dealing with my own hip sprain, I knew that if I went into this competition, I was going to come out of it further hurt or with a hospital bill or something. And I could not see myself going into it safely. So it was one of those necessary calls where it was like, do I go here to a foreign country, hurt myself, and then bottom out of that competition and the Shaw Classic? Or do I have to make the tough call and gear one more week of full recovery efforts to make sure that I don't bum out of 2 and I can still focus and give it my good performance at the Shaw? And that's what I did. Watching the way that this played out for a lot of my brothers in strength over there in Cardiff, I know I made the right choice. It really sucks to see so many of them go down and get hurt or be wearing the battle scars of their trials of strength that they've endured over the past few months. But I feel glad that I made my call. I really hope that the guys like Evan Singleton, Mitch Hooper, Alexei Novikov all can heal up in this week between yesterday's contest and the Shaw Classic, because I want to have a fierce competition with them. You know, I don't want my brothers showing up less than whole.
It's a tough season for all of you. I commend everything that you guys are doing, from World's Strongest Man to traveling to another country to go. That the travel on top of everything does affects so much as well. It's unless you've lived it, and I've lived it on such a small scale, just with what I've been doing. I couldn't imagine doing it all year round, and then back to back, such high percentage all the time, and getting asked more and more from yourself.
That's why it's so many of the efforts are. The hardest thing is not the weights in the contest; it's the recovery efforts in between shows. But that's the line we have to walk, especially as a professional athlete too. Is you either accept the opportunities before you, or you get passed up and they get given to someone else. And if you can keep your body healthy, you can keep saying yes, and you can keep getting PRs, getting paychecks, getting glory along the way, whatever it is. But if you fall apart, then that's it. Your body is the machine at work, and you got to preserve it. Watching the rest of the show, it was, hard to like I said, see the guys who were in less than their full state. But the pinnacle of the excitement, I feel, came from watching Mitch Hooper and Pavlo Nekonechny chase down that top spot. Of course, with Novikov trailing in third, and then Big Gav in fourth. He was just the best Gavin we've ever seen.
I believe Gavin actually ended up in fifth.
Oh, yeah, sorry, in fifth. Who wound up in fourth?
Hicks, I believe.
We forgot about Graham Hicks. Oh my gosh, Hicksy.
I was like, wait a minute.
One of my favorite people. He's such a nice guy. Getting to see Hicksy return to the contest and watching him just blow that 1,000 out of the water. I mean, Hicksy is someone who at the Shaw Classic last year, we were going head to head on that Hummer tire deadlift. I'm like, this guy has some real deadlift power. I knew he had it from watching him in my early days with strongman. He was someone I looked up to, someone who was, one of the guys like, this guy's at the top. I want to be just like Hicksy. But seeing him step onto the field again was awesome, getting the 1,000 pounds, and he did look a little bit beat up after the medley, though.
Everyone looked beat up after that medley. And transferred over. I know you missed part of the log, right? That's I believe you told me that before we got on. But watching him, I was surprised that, again, this is a 330-pound log, Slater log. Him only getting 3 surprised me. So I believe something had to be up for him, because he's such a good log presser.
Oh, he is a guy. He's a good log presser and a good deadlifter. Rarely do you have an athlete that is both, and he's both.
Yeah. And so, that was funny. I think to kind of piggyback on the battle all day, seeing Novikov and Hooper hitting those high numbers, Hooper hitting 8 and getting launched by the log.
That shows you all that tension that's just built up there, in that posterior chain especially.
So, I mean, I think they said it was, I know you didn't see some of that, but it was definitely fun to watch that event. But I think Hicks was the one that surprised me on that event. And I don't want to say negative, because I'm sure something was up, but he didn't seem like everything was firing after those first 2 events.
That's the general consensus about so many of these guys, though. That was the I don't know if the sour taste left in my mouth is the way to put it, but as a fellow athlete, as a brother to them in a lot of ways, it's it's hard to see these guys just not at full power. And there was
we're always hypercritical too, though, as athletes watching, especially if we know something, or know them way more than I do, of course. But seeing what their potential is and they seem not live up to, I think hurts more than anything else. Because in the sport of strongman, you always want everyone to hit their PRs. Yeah. Even if you're facing them, you want them to hit their numbers. That's all you can control is your own numbers. You want everyone to hit their best. That's what makes it hard to watch sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Wrapping it up, one of my favorite moments of the competition was at the end of the show when Novikov took the mic from Neil Pickup and walked over to Pavlo Nekonechny and embraced him and took to the crowd to talk about unity and with Ukraine and how he's proud of his Ukrainian brother. Last year, there was some things that happened behind the scenes in one of the athlete room where there was, I guess, some heated back and forth between Novikov and Pavlo that none of us were aware of at the time. It was after the Stones last year. Pavlo comes up to Novikov and just full-on power punches him in the back of the head a few times, and something erupted out of that. I mean, it was a really crappy situation to see that happen. It's got no place as a strongman competition, so it left a very bad taste in our mouths for Pavlo. But to see him come back this year, to keep his cool throughout the whole competition, and to also see him and Novikov being friendly with each other, and to have Novikov, he's not a man who talks often, but to have him grab the mic, talk to the whole crowd and address everyone, say how proud he is of Pavlo and how he, couldn't quite measure up. That was one of my favorite contests, because I remember last year being in that room, being 10 feet away from Pavlo and Novikov as Pavlo went and, had a emotional lapse of judgment and started wailing on his Ukrainian brother there. But that was one of my favorite parts of the show, and I'm glad to see that happen.
That was definitely a heartwarming part. I didn't know all that backstory completely behind that, but it makes it even more of a moment there. The two Ukrainians taking first and third on top of there, with Hooper getting second, losing out to the Stones, unfortunately. But it's nice to see that embrace. And it's again, this sport is a brotherhood. Like, no matter where you're from, you say brothers in strength, and I take that to heart.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, no one understands the sacrifice or all the effort and everything that we do to continue to walk this path. But Pavlo is someone who's so talented. He earned every bit of his victory last night, and someone who belongs at the World's Strongest Man stage. And I look forward to competing with him again, especially if he can keep his head level and stay away from punching people.
He's very young, so
he is very young. And I think
there's no excuse for doing something like that.
There's no excuse, but he did come back. He did promise to behave, and he behaved, and he had a smile on his face. He was respectable, at least from what we could see. I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but Novikov and him talking at the end to the crowd was nice.
I feel like Novikov wouldn't have said that if there's anything ill behind the scenes.
I agree.
Novikov is a very soft-spoken guy, and he's a very true guy. He speaks his mind and how he feels.
Repeat that for a second. We broke up for a second.
Oh, sorry. Which part do you mean to repeat?
Just the last part, how he speaks, how he feels, or what were you saying?
Oh, okay. So Novikov is a very true individual. He speaks his mind. He speaks exactly how he feels. When he speaks, he means every word of it.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
That's one thing about Novikov that I've seen.
It was a great contest yesterday. In a lot of ways, it was tough to watch, but it was still a monumental day for strength. We will have to wait another year or another couple of opportunities to see if the 505 can fall, if someone can beat Hafthor's gym record or Eddie's competition record. And, I'm going to gear every effort to make sure that I'm there next year. And not
can I chime in on one quick thing?
100%, brother. Let's hear it.
We didn't talk about this event, but seeing as this was your event last year, how long would you have held that hammer if given the opportunity this year?
I tell you what, brother, knowing that I won the hammer hold last year, I was training it with a vengeance. I'm like, I got to give it my all and make sure I can try my best to pull off 2 first place victories back to back in a year. So I was going to aim for the 75-second mark. That's what I was really aiming for. I was for sure going to get a minute with it. In my mind, I was telling myself, hey, look what Trey Mitchell did at the Rogue, with his hammer hold world record. And that was my motivation going into it. But one thing I will say, in all fairness, last year, I only got 1 rep on the Viking press. So my shoulders were a little bit more fresh than some people, but that's no excuse. It's not actively pressing. You just got to be able to lock in. I say it's more upper back at that point than it is shoulders. But any last points you want to make on the Giants Live World Open from yesterday?
Like I said, the one thing I want to bring up is Gavin. That was one of my favorite things to watch the entire show. Just him in his hometown, him showing up and his improvement, I think is the biggest takeaway in my opinion from that show, because now he's becoming more and more of a force.
Yeah.
Coming up. So that's something I love seeing again, his improvement.
My favorite sentimental moment was the moment between Novikov and Pavlo, but my favorite moments throughout the competition was watching Gavin just bring his best self in his home turf there in Wales. He has improved dramatically across the board, and I think he's going to be someone to continue to watch in all the years to come, both in Giants Live and World's Strongest Man. So, on that note, brother, let's space out for a second. We had a pretty significant day in space history yesterday. Yesterday on August 6th, 10 years ago in 2012, that is when the Curiosity rover landed on Mars. So a whole decade we've had Curiosity on Mars. And up to this point, we've had only little rovers go up there. We've seen little snapshots of what our rovers will send us back. It's like, oh, this rock structure looks like an alien doorway, or look at this dust devil blowing across Mars. My question to you, CJ, when we finally get boots on Mars, or as we continue to increase our technological surveillance of Mars, what do you think we're going to find? You think there's going to be anything new? Because, we have shown that there has been faint signs of old water, or that Mars used to have an atmosphere or ice caps, but we also still only have rovers there. What changes when there's an actual human presence? What do you see?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that we're going to see a key difference when we finally get to Mars, which I don't know if it's going to happen even in my lifetime, but it's going to happen someday.
Oh, we're going to get to Mars in a couple years. Elon Musk wants boots on Mars before the next decade.
Oh, well, I'll believe that when I see it. I mean, I would love to see it. I think it's so cool.
I mean, we've been waiting for it for 70 years now, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, but I think we're going to see more signs of past life than anything else, like little things that just could not survive based on the distance from the sun. Because we're like, realistically, when you think of it as like a large scale of things, we're very small and very fortunate where we ended up in comparison with everything we have. We're almost like a happy accident, the way I think about like the whole world, the way it's all structured, is how much we have right here, right now, and how much we are getting, energy from the sun, and how much amount of water we have. I think we're going to see signs of things that just could not survive because of the distance or lack of atmosphere or something like that, which is unfortunate, but I think that's what we find.
So things that aren't so lucky as we are to be in that Goldilocks zone, that perfect distance from the sun. Although, this millions and millions of years ago, Mars had, bodies of water. It had ice caps. It had an atmosphere. It very much could have been in the Goldilocks zone in that moment of time. But fast forward to, however many billions of years, billions of years it's been since I think you're right. We will see past signs of microbial life, of times when Mars was able to thrive there, which will kind of be heartbreaking, but could give us some insight as to what happened, what the future of our planet could be, or I guess just more insight on how we can make sure that we don't wind up like Mars. That being said, not winding up like Mars as a lasting note right there, but when we do get to Mars and we try to make it a more livable environment again, I mean, it's a very harsh environment. The solar cycles are weird. It's very cold. It's a rocky desert. There's no water. There's no breathable air. We've heard thoughts of humanity being able to terraform Mars. And this is a process that takes hundreds and thousands of years of being able to transform Mars into a more Earth-like state, bodies of water, greenery, oxygen. Do you think it's worth it to even terraform Mars? Do you think the efforts to do that are worth it, or would they be better spent finding ways to cover more interstellar distance?
Like I said, I'm uncertain that it's worth it for the purpose of, I feel like we're going to find signs of past life and things that just weren't built to sustain based upon its structure. I think the farther we get out, the more we have potential to learn. So I feel like I understand we have something in front of us, but that could just be like the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, of like what we could learn from going further and further if possible.
And do you think that this is something where we don't need to spend any effort in colonizing Mars heavily or terraforming Mars, and we should just completely focus on getting further? Or do we need to make sure that we have it as a fallback for when life on Earth ultimately is not a possibility?
I think just like focusing more on a making Earth a better place is probably a better use of energy than trying to figure out a plan D. We're going to try to cultivate a new planet on top of that. And if that's the case we're trying to make here, I feel like there's better options. There's a reason why everything dried up, and it might cause more effort. It might be better to put our efforts into fixing what we have on in front of us here than trying to recreate something that already failed to an extent. It might be too far gone.
And that is a valid point, and that's kind of like one of the crossroads that always is faced when we talk about space exploration or life beyond Earth. But the scientific counteract to that is there's a lot of reasons why life will not be able to sustain itself here on Earth in the foreseeable future. I mean, we talk about even the sun aging, as the sun ages and turns into a red giant, that Goldilocks zone that I just talked about, that you talked about, where conditions are perfect, is not going to be the case. Or you have asteroids possibly coming in to hit Earth. You have global warming and climate change. I mean, I have conversations with fellow Texans all the time, like, was it really this hot 10 years ago, or am I seriously feeling the effects of our climate changing? Because there's a point where it gets too hot to where life can't sustain itself. There's all these doomsday theories that will happen. It's just a scope of thousands and thousands and millions of years. So knowing that there will be a point where Earth just is not a viable option, Mars is the next neighbor. Of course, we've got the moon, but even at 200 or 186,000 miles away, whatever it is, that's still pretty close in space terms to where if something goes wrong here on Earth, it's not far enough away. What do you have to say to that?
Again, it's a hard question, but I feel like at this point, until we get boots on Mars and actually can see if it's possible, it's hard to say, but I think farther might be better at that point, in my opinion, just because like trying to push little rovers outwards, there's so many things we don't know inside our own solar system as well that we could be figuring out versus focusing on this. Like, it could just be like the low-hanging fruit ahead of us right here, because we've been working on this for so long and there's been not much fruit of this labor. Maybe we should pivot. And this is kind of like what I'm looking at.
Yeah, and I see where the pivot is that you think of viable options in terms of what's accessible. The only other cosmic body that we've been on physically is the moon. We've sent some probes to Venus, but they burn up with a short amount of time with that crazy atmosphere. And then you've got Mars, and then the next thing after that is, Jupiter after the asteroid belt. There's not a lot of other options, and you're talking about space in the scope of all of these, light years. One astronomical unit, the distance from the sun to the Earth, and then you've got all that distance repeated over and over again between Earth and the other planets. I mean, think how long it took for Voyager to get outside of our galaxy, or outside of our solar system, not outside of our galaxy. We haven't been around that long, human history. There's some crazy distances here, and when you talk about those distances, our 100-year lifespan just ain't much. And whatever the next neighbor is, that's what we got to look at, and that seems to be Mars. But lightning round for you. If you did have to live on Mars, would you want to live on the surface or underground?
Probably underground.
If you lived underground, would you want to live in a cave, or would you want to live in a possible underground lake, like in a water environment?
Water environment.
Why do you pick water environment? Just curious.
Just the accessibility to water on top of that. Plus, I just think it'd be more, if I'm going for comfort too, I think it'd be more relaxing for myself and the availability of like uses of water.
Would you rather live on, underground in a water cave in Mars, or would you rather live in orbit on Mars?
I'd still go with underground.
All right, so you want to actually feel grounded to a planet.
Yeah, I feel I'm also kind of like a hermit of a person. So it's kind of just like I like to have like my space, and I like the idea of that. Just this is my spot.
Yeah.
Versus like having like this like omnipresent like orbit around me, or like everything's like coming in different directions. I can kind of like have my space, and this is mine.
Yeah, well, have your space on a planet where, you know, you can't really breathe or go outside. You're going to be confined somewhere. And that's, I guess you stand a better chance being a 175, 200 athlete versus a super heavyweight 300 athlete, huh? The spacesuits are a little bit more comfy.
They probably make one that fits me better. I could probably run quicker in it too.
Yeah. Well, thank you for indulging me on that space talk right there. I do think that there will be some major technological advances for human society as we continue to explore these endeavors, but it is always a fine balance to walk. Like, how can we focus so much when there's so many problems here still on Earth? You know, even talking about Alexei Novikov and Pavlo Nakonieczny and what they face with wartime in Ukraine. I mean, the fact that stuff like that still goes on is beyond me. But space talk aside, Giants Live aside, you know, it was tough to pass up on that contest, but I'm feeling really good. My recovery efforts over this past week have been very strategic and exactly what I need. I just got done with my last training session going into the Shaw Classic. I did a Hummer tire deadlift simulator, and I worked up to 2 singles with 935 pounds. Did not feel my hip once. Felt really good. Did some circus dumbbell, worked up to 200 pounds. Felt great there. I mean, all systems go. I'm ready to push my performance at the Shaw, and sucks I missed out on Giants Live, but it was a big day in strength for everyone who was there. I'm very proud of my brothers, and for those that continue on to the Shaw Classic, I look forward to seeing them this weekend in Colorado. But CJ, thank you for being here, brother. The American Deadlift holder, getting ready for Clash of the 80s, CJ Krause. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and I know I'm going to have you on again in the future. This was my first Titan Talk from a distance. Thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's been great. I've been trying to set this up for a while. I'm excited for you to come out to Colorado for the Shaw Classic, so that'll be fun for everything. It's just been a fun few weeks in the sport itself, from Giants Live Clash of the 90s last week. We got Shaw Classic this upcoming week, and then we have Clash of the 80s 2 weeks from now. So it's a fun time to be a strong. And then Clash of the 91s the week after that.
I know, man.
Like,
Summer is really finishing in a high gear for strongman, and it's very exciting. But it's a great sport that we are walking in, my friend. Thanks for being on. I hope your training continues to go well. If I get to see you in Colorado, I look forward to it, and we'll do another one of these soon.
I'm sure you'll hear about the training all too well.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to make time to hang out. Cool.
I look forward to it, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, you can find CJ Krause on Instagram. What is your handle?
The Giant Slayer Krause, all underscores in between the words there. So that's so you can find me on Instagram. Add me, ask me questions about the sport itself. If you have any deadlift, anything, just reach out. I'm a fun guy to be around. So.
CJ Krause, the Giant Slayer. This has been Titan Talk. Thank you guys for joining me this week. I'll be heading to the Shaw Classic in a few days, and maybe I'll bring you some content while on the road. CJ, thanks again, brother. Everyone out there, stay safe and have sweet dreams of power. Until next time.